Hi, it's Julian and Jen with Autonomy Learning, and today we're going to continue our conversation about kids learning and practice. And this is near and dear to my heart because as adults, it's really hard sometimes when our kids, make mistakes or aren't performing their best. And how do we handle that?
I think that the word that you just used, performing, is a big piece of this, right?
Yeah.
When we think about the time that our kids have to do all their activities, right? Whether
Yeah.
we're talking about running or a piano recital or what it is, whatever, right? How much of that time is spent in performance mode versus learning mode, right? Because they're really different.
Right.
And the way that kids approach them and think about them, and often the language that we use, our mannerisms and the emotions are heightened when we move into performance mode.
Well, and also to think about the times where it is a performance
Yeah.
as a learning experience.
Yes, to
So
reframe that.
That's the piece that is kind of hitting home with me today because our son had an experience with his sports and he didn't do as well as he wanted to. And he had to manage all the emotions and he was doing his work, right? Where then his dad and I had to do our work, right? Where we were thinking, okay, I know he's upset. How are we going to move through this experience? And, there's lots of ways that we could have chosen. We could have said, hey, there's a lot of other things. We could have made excuses. We could have blamed. We could have found all these different things, but really to sit in the yuck of how it felt at the time. Mm-hmm. My husband was so wise. He just turned to him and said, in a really calm voice, he's like, hey, what did you learn from that? And that was hard too because our son wasn't really ready to talk about
Still
that.
kind of raw.
Yeah, and
that's okay.
It's that idea of yes, this was a performance, but really it's also a learning experience, and those things can go hand in hand, and that's how you continue to grow and improve. The power of reflecting on something that didn't go well, which doesn't feel good, and we as parents, again, I think equally I had to manage as many emotions as he did.
Yeah.
Right.
But you're managing them in a way where you're also modeling for him how to manage big feelings.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the biggest piece is thinking about this in a bigger context, not just making this a one time and this is it. Right. But saying, okay, and it's been interesting because I know in the blog we talked about our kids teaching us too, but then being able to watch him then be able to manage that and say, okay, this is a worthwhile sitting in the yuck. And then this morning he woke up and he said, hey, this is how I plan on handling this from here. This is what I did learn. I went and thought about it. And that's what we want them to do.
Yeah.
But we have to provide that space. Yeah. And even in the performance, we need to say this is still a learning moment, right? As painful as sometimes that feels for everybody.
Well, and what I'm hearing a lot in your story too is not, I could see that he was uncomfortable, so we went out for ice cream right away, right? Sometimes it's our instinct as a parent to distract as quickly as possible because we can see that our kid is experiencing something that's painful, right? When they care about something, you're going to see that. Right. But that there's value and a lot of reflection and a lot of growth that can come from those uncomfortable feelings.
Right.
And that it's okay to be there and stay connected, but not to feel like we need to remove that discomfort right away because there's value in it.
Right. And I think that's totally applicable to the classroom too.
Yeah.
Like when you know that, a child's struggling, you can't just distract, right? It's leaning into that moment and saying, okay, what are we learning here? We're not comparing anybody else to anybody else. We're looking at your growth and your learning, right? And being able to kind of normalize that process of it's not a performance, it's not a checkbox to be done. We just continue to move on this trajectory of growth.
Right.
Changes everything. Emotionally, they'll be able to better, regulate if they know that, oh, this is a process. This isn't I didn't do.
And when we model that we see this as a normal part of growth, that's what kids are going to internalize and have that really healthy sense that there are going to be many growth experiences ahead of me and I can manage those.
Yeah. So, I think my husband's wise words are what we can all use is, hey, what did you learn from that?
Yeah.
And just be curious rather than offer what you saw first or, what you think they need to hear.
Love that. Very wise
So
words.
tough work for the Forrest family, but we're all growing and learning.
Tough, valuable work.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we'll be back with another conversation next week. Feel free to comment below.